Welcome to The Painted Photograph, an exhibit of Kallitypes by me, Jen Perenya. I'm an artist in residence here at the photography department of the Flower City Art Center in Rochester, New York. This exhibit is the culmination of a 6-month artist residency program during which I explored the creation of Kallitypes and created 2 distinct bodies of work, one focusing on winter scenes and snow texture, which are all black and white selenium tone Kallitypes, and a second body of work which started out as black and white selenium toned photographs of vegetation, including vegetables, cacti, and a couple of other living items, which I then hand watercolored over the top of. In this short video, what I'm hoping to do is give you the gallery experience, and so we'll start off by taking a look around the gallery, and then we'll look at each body of work, and I'll talk a little bit about the pieces in the process. So we'll start with the gallery tour. So this particular room is called the Sunken Room Gallery. It is divided into sort of 2 separate sections, a series of white walls which have special gallery lighting above them, and this is the backdrop for my winter series. And then if we look around the room, you can see I've got some tables in here. This is used partly as storage space, partly as classroom, and then a couple of brick walls. And these brick walls, we thought the warm tone of the brick would really pick up the colors in the hand-colored vegetation series. And so we'll examine each of those more closely in just a moment. In addition, the gallery gives me a little pedestal. There's a little flower exhibit with a guest book and some information. Here I've actually got a write-up about the inspiration behind the show, some of the Kallitype process, and more information about each different series. And then this is one of the actual postcards that we use for the promotional materials, featuring one of my winter images. And then on the back are sort of the details of the exhibit. And here you can see that this show opened on Saturday, January 12th, and it actually closed yesterday, which was February 16th. So we'll start over here looking at the winter series, and we're going to kind of go image by image. I was really fortunate that the show had such a great reception and a lot of positive feedback. I ended up, out of the 25 total images in the show, selling 10 or 11 of the ones here in the gallery, plus a handful of rejects. This first image that we see here is called Snow Scales. It's sold. As you can see, if I get a little bit closer in, it features texture of snow that actually looks like scales. This is based on the wind over the snow. A lot of these images were created while I was cross-country skiing, and I would just have my phone with me and notice the different texture of the snow as I was going around. So all of these prints actually started out as digital iPhone photos made either with an iPhone 7 or an iPhone 10. As part of my process, I converted those digital images to negatives using Photoshop, and then printed them on Pictorico paper, and then made contact prints. And I'll talk more about the Kallitype process and about what I did to make those negatives in just a moment. The second image that we have here is affectionately known as Snow Crust. This one is actually called, it's affectionately known as Surface of the Moon, but it is actually titled Snow Crust. This is again another sort of phenomenon that happens when the underlying snow structure starts to dehydrate and leaves these pockmarks on the surface, caused a little bit by wind that's picked up snow and blown it around, and then also by the rest of maybe weather. You can see here a little bit of distortion in the upper left corner due to the iPhone lens, which I chose to leave in because I thought that it looked really interesting. This image also has sold during the exhibit opening, and I'm really excited that somebody's going to be taking that one home. The third image that we have here is called Snowdrift. This again is the one you just saw a moment ago as the promotional image. It people have said to me it's so abstract, it's hard to know what it is. It kind of looks like a snow, or kind of looks like a sand dune or a wave. It actually, as the original digital print, was not this dark, but when I modified the S-curve in Photoshop to create the digital negative, it ended up having a lot more contrast as well as gray tonal range, something that I really like the texture of it and think that it came out great. It has not sold yet, and the items that are still available for sale in the winter series are all the same. They are $250 with the frame, and then they're just $200 if you bought them without the frame, simply matted as you see here. The exhibit actually ended yesterday, so the images are still for sale, but you'll have to buy them directly through me, and I'll provide some information in the notes of this video. This next one is called Snow Shadows. It's actually the second one in the Snow Shadows series. There's two different ones. Again, just shadows on the snow with a little bit of texture. Also, this item remains for sale. This is an example also of a print where you can see a little bit of the brush strokes from the Kallitype process. So we'll talk just for a second about what that means. As a contact printing process, I basically mixed my own chemistry. Kallitype's is, actually the Kallitype process is a historic process derived from some of the original photographic processes from the 1840s. It was patented in around 1899 and finally became something that was used commercially, though it never really gained a lot of commercial success for a variety of reasons. But one of the things that I like about this process is that you hand mix the chemical emulsion or the sensitizer, and you apply that to the surface of any kind of paper. I'm using a watercolor paper, and sometimes the brush strokes show through, which I think gives each one sort of an interesting feel. And you can see that here on the side. There's sort of a darker line here and then a lighter line just showing where the chemistry was a little bit thicker applied underneath there. Maybe a little bit difficult to see if you're not used to looking at these, but it makes each one of the images a unique, one-of-a-kind piece of art. This next image is called Snow Tracks. It's rabbit tracks in the snow. Again, great tonal range here, not a lot of black blacks, not a lot of white whites, but you can sort of see the tooth of the watercolor paper coming through there a little bit. This particular image sold to a good friend of mine. It was the first one to sell in the exhibit, and it was really exciting that something sold because I actually had spent so much time making these. I had this feeling that even if I didn't sell anything during this entire exhibit, I'd be really happy to bring them all home with me since they sort of feel like your children after you've spent hours and hours on them in a dark room. Anyway, this one I thought came out really sweet, and I'm really excited for my friend to have this at home with her. This next one is called Snow Dusted Icicles. It's also part of a two-part series. This is number one in the two-part series. This was taken at the Glen Iris Inn in Letchworth State Park in New York, and this is from a big water fountain that sort of freezes over on the side of the Glen Iris Inn. This is just a detail of the ice that has a little bit of snow dusting on it. People have likened this one to sort of looking like wet hair or the jaws of some kind of an animal, big teeth hanging down. It is one of the more maybe interesting images in the show, and I made a number of prints of it while I was trying to really get it to be perfect. So there are still some sort of reject prints available for sale on this one. This next one is called Snowdrift with Debris. This was the most challenging image in the winter series. I had to make 4 different negatives in order to get this one to work. The first negative just came out where the tree portion was way too sort of overexposed and dense, whereas the snow drift portion was blown out. Second negative, the snow drift portion had a lot of great detail, but the texture was completely lost in the tree. The third version of the negative, we had more texture in the tree, but then we completely lost all of these very soft details of the snowdrift. And then finally, I got this last negative, which allowed me to have a nice balance between them. Some folks have asked me why I chose to actually leave this little stem showing on the side here, because it seems like it would be a more balanced image without this right here. But I actually liked the sort of rule of thirds aspect of this with the tree trunk here, and then in the middle is the well of the snowdrift, or the well of the tree with the debris, and then you've got the actual drift here on the side. And if I had actually pulled the mat board in a little further, it would have cut into this nice curve of the debris. So I really was proud of how this one came out after all the work that I put into it. Still available for sale. And then completing this wall, we have this one, which is called Snow Ripples. It's again another snow effect where the underlying snow structure is dehydrating, and it makes these like sort of pillowy, marshmallowy looking clumps of snow. This one, I've had people actually tell me they think it looks like bodies under a blanket. or it looks like mussels. And it's got a really beautiful texture as well as gray tonal range to it. Still available for sale. Definitely one of my favorites in this series. This one here is called Snowy Branches. It's one of the more literal images in this particular series. Here I've got just sort of pristine snow, which took a little bit of getting the emulsion painted on really clean, really smooth in order to be able to see that through, and then sort of untouched snow on the branches. That one also sold during the exhibit opening. Next to that, we have the second in the Snow Dusted Icicle series, also sold. Just another part of that fountain outside of the Glen Iris Inn in Letchworth State Park. So just a slightly different view. Again, really nice texture and gray tonal range if we look at some of the different details that are in this image. This next one, again, one of my top 3 in this winter series. This one is called Snow and Fog. This is an image that I shot last year in Cazenovia at the Stone Quarry Hill Art Park, which is a sculpture park in Cazenovia, New York. We had gone to visit it and traipse around in about 3 feet of snow. It was a very foggy day, and it made the sculptures look really, really interesting. I also took a few landscapes on that day, and this is one of those. So you can see sort of in the foreground the snow being a little bit highlighted by the ambient light, and then in the distance is a row of trees and just the clouds. I just love the subtlety to this. Again, really only a little bit of black blacks, no white whites, and just has this beautiful sort of dreamlike look to it. This one is still available for sale. And the final image in the winter series is the second of the snow shadows. This is actually snow shadows number 1. Again, focusing on the texture of the snow, getting a really clean emulsion laid down, and then being able to make that the shadow, and you see the contrast between the black and the gray tones. So that's the winter series, as you can see here.